I didn't believe in ghosts, not really. As an architecture student at 23, I was more concerned with angles, load-bearing walls, and Gothic facades than with campfire tales. So when my professor suggested Havenbrook Sanatorium as a potential thesis project, I jumped at the chance. Nestled deep in the Maine woods, the asylum had been abandoned for decades. Stories of whispering walls and strange sightings didn't deter me. They only made it more intriguing. The building, a crumbling relic of the 1930s, seemed like a perfect case study of decayed architecture. The locals weren't as thrilled with my enthusiasm. The old man at the gas station warned me, "No one goes up there anymore, miss." Not after what happened. What happened? I asked, pen poised to jot down details. He shook his head, his face pale. "They say the walls remember the pain. You'd do well to stay clear." I offered a polite smile, dismissing his superstition. I arrived at Havenbrook on a crisp autumn evening. The trees pressed in around the building like mourners at a funeral. Its facade was grimy, the once grand archway now sagging. My boots crunched on the gravel as I approached, the air thick with the smell of mildew and decay. Inside, the silence was absolute, broken only by my footsteps echoing off the cracked tiles. The corridors yawned ahead like a maw, their walls scrawled with graffiti and time-worn scratches. I unpacked my tools in the main hall, carefully setting up my tripod to measure dimensions. Hours passed as I worked, sketching the layout and noting the architecture's peculiarities. It wasn't until twilight that I heard it, a faint whisper, soft as the rustle of leaves. At first, I ignored it, chalking it up to the wind. But as I moved to measure a decrepit hallway, the sound grew louder, like voices overlapping in hurried distress. My pulse quickened. I told myself it was nothing, just my imagination playing tricks. But when the whispers began forming words, my hand froze mid-measurement. "Emily?" The sound of my name, carried on a breathy sigh, turned my blood cold. "Who's there?" I called, my voice wavering. Silence answered. I took a step forward, the flashlight beam trembling in my grip. The whispers resumed, guiding me like a macabre compass. I followed them to a room at the end of the hall, its peeling sign barely legible. Therapy. Inside, the air was heavy, damp, and suffocating. My flashlight revealed claw marks etched deep into the walls, as if someone had desperately tried to escape. Above them, scrawled in jagged letters, were the words, "Let us out." A chill ran down my spine, and the whispers turned to muffled laughter, low and guttural, reverberating off the walls. I turned to leave, but something in the cracked mirror stopped me cold. There, in its jagged surface, stood the reflection of a woman. Her hair was wild, her eyes hollow pits of fury. She wore a straitjacket, the fabric stretched taut over her bony frame. She shouldn't have been there. She wasn't there. I stumbled backward, my flashlight clattering to the floor. The woman's reflection tilted its head, her lips curling into a sneer. "You shouldn't be here," she hissed. I scrambled to my feet, knocking over a pile of broken furniture in my panic. The woman moved closer, not through the room, but within the mirror, her image growing larger with each breath I took. The whispers turned into a cacophony of screams, filling the space until it felt as if the walls themselves were shrieking. I bolted from the room, my heartbeat deafening in my ears. The corridor stretched endlessly before me, and every shadow seemed to writhe. Just as I reached the exit, the heavy door slammed shut with a force that rattled the floor. The air grew dense, pressing against my chest like an invisible hand. Shadows swirled in the periphery of my vision, taunting and teasing. I clawed at the door, my fingers scraping against the splintered wood. "Let me out!" I screamed, tears streaming down my face. The laughter behind me grew louder. Cold fingers brushed the back of my neck, and I turned to see nothing but darkness. When the door finally gave way, I stumbled into the open air, gasping like a drowning victim reaching the surface. The asylum loomed behind me, its shattered windows glinting in the moonlight like a predator's teeth. It wasn't until I reached my car that I noticed the scratches on my arms, deep, red welts that hadn't been there before. I didn't sleep that night. The whispers lingered in my mind, replaying over and over like a broken record. My professor dismissed my story the next day, laughing it off as hysteria brought on by stress. I never returned to Havenbrook. Years later, I heard the rumors. Locals spoke of seeing a young woman's face in the asylum's broken windows, her expression one of terror. Some said it was the spirit of a long-dead patient. Others whispered that Havenbrook had claimed a new victim. Sometimes, late at night, I hear whispers in my apartment, faint at first but growing louder. And when I catch my reflection in the mirror, I swear I see her. Wild hair, hollow eyes, and a knowing smile. It began as just another venture, another conquest to capture the beauty of decay. I'm Ella, a photographer with a morbid fascination for abandoned places. This time, I had chosen Briarcliff Asylum, an infamous relic tucked away in rural Vermont. Locals whispered tales of unspeakable horrors, and that only heightened its allure. I parked my car by the overgrown gates as twilight descended, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. My heart fluttered with equal parts excitement and dread. The building loomed ahead, its windows shattered like jagged teeth, and ivy crept along its crumbling facade. The morgue was my target, a place I'd read about in urban legend forums. A haven for ghost hunters and thrill seekers, they said. I squeezed through a rusted side door, my footsteps echoing in the cavernous asylum halls. The air was thick with mildew, carrying a sickly sweet undertone of decay. Dust motes danced in the beam of my flashlight as I navigated the maze of graffiti-stained walls and peeling paint. Finally, I found it. The morgue. Its metal doors stood ajar, as if inviting me in. The room was sterile and foreboding, despite decades of abandonment. Rows of rusted gurneys lined the space, their wheels locked in eternal stillness. The faint scent of formaldehyde lingered in the air, mixing with the damp chill that raised goosebumps on my arms. I set up my tripod in the corner, carefully adjusting my camera's angle. The dim glow of the flashlight barely cut through the gloom. Each shutter click echoed like a gunshot, amplifying the silence. That's when I heard it. Over here. The voice was faint, almost playful, but something about it felt wrong. It wasn't just the sound. It was the way the words seemed to distort, stretching and compressing unnaturally. I froze, my pulse hammering in my ears. "Hello!" I called out, my voice trembling. Silence. I spun around, scanning the empty hallways. My flashlight flickered, plunging the room into momentary darkness before stabilizing. I cursed under my breath, trying to convince myself it was just a dying battery. But deep down I knew better. The whispers started again, faint at first, then multiplying, overlapping in a dissonant chorus. They seemed to emanate from the refrigeration units, hulking, rusted cabinets lining the back wall. I hesitated, every instinct screaming at me to leave. But curiosity clawed at me, overriding common sense. With trembling hands, I approached the nearest unit. The whispers grew louder as I gripped the handle, each word incomprehensible, yet dripping with malice. I took a deep breath and yanked it open. Inside was a child's shoe. It was small, scuffed, and impossibly clean compared to its surroundings. The sight of it sent a cold wave crashing over me. Before I could process what I was looking at, the temperature plummeted. My breath fogged the air, and an icy chill brushed against my shoulder. Light, like a child's touch. I stumbled back, heart racing, and slammed the unit shut. The whispers turned to laughter, high-pitched, mocking, and echoing from every corner. "Enough," I whispered, though I doubted the voices cared. I turned to flee, but my foot caught on something, sending me sprawling to the ground. I glanced back, expecting to see the tripod or some debris. Instead, there was a gurney, a rusted monstrosity that hadn't been there moments before. Scrambling to my feet, I saw it. A shadowy figure stood by the door, its form twisting unnaturally as if fighting to stay corporeal. It didn't move, but leaned slightly forward, its whispers now unmistakable. "Ella!" The sound of my name spoken in that distorted, otherworldly tone shattered my composure. I bolted, adrenaline propelling me toward the exit. But the figure moved faster, blocking my path with impossible speed. I screamed, hurling myself toward the nearest window. The glass shattered around me as I crashed through, landing hard on the damp grass outside. Ignoring the pain, I ran to my car, never once looking back. Once safely inside, I locked the doors and sat trembling, my breaths ragged. My camera, I had left it behind, but there was no way I was going back in there. In the days that followed, I tried to move on, to convince myself it had been my imagination. But then the photos appeared. It was late one night when I received the email notification. Your cloud storage has been updated. My stomach churned as I opened the app, praying it was a glitch. But there they were. The photos were nothing like the ones I had taken. Instead of decaying gurneys and peeling walls, the images showed me. My face twisted in terror, surrounded by shadowy, skeletal figures. Their bony fingers reached for me, their eyeless faces tilted in silent mockery. The final photo was the worst. It showed the morgue's refrigeration unit. The door I had opened was wide open, and inside wasn't a child's shoe. It was me. My body lay cold and lifeless, my eyes wide with frozen fear. I haven't touched my camera since. I've tried to tell myself it's over, but deep down, I know the truth. The morgue wasn't just haunted. It was hungry, and I had been its prey.